The first thing Elena Robinson registered wasn't a sound, but a weight. It was the crushing, unfamiliar weight of fabric. Yards of intricate, decades-old Venetian lace forming a sweeping bridal gown. Her eyes fluttered open to a blur of gilded plasterwork and heavy velvet drapes. This was not her apartment, and this was not a dream. She lay in a bed the size of a small car, the room filled with museum-quality antiques, a setting far more historical than her life as a curator had ever been. Before we dive deeper into this story, make sure to subscribe. New stories unfold here every day, and trust me, you won't want to miss a single one. And don't forget to comment which state you're watching from. I love seeing where everyone's tuning in. Now let's begin. A cold, heavy pressure settled on her left hand. She lifted it, her breath catching. The ring was not a diamond, but a massive, unique, cushion-cut deep red ruby, the color of ancient dried blood. It pulsed under the weak morning light, catching the fire in the gold setting. She had no memory of how it got there, no memory of the last 3 days at all. Panic, cold and sharp, sliced through the confusion. She threw off the covers and stumbled out of the bed, the antique dress rustling heavily. The sound brought a woman to the door, a middle-aged attendant in a crisp black uniform, her face a mask of practiced neutrality. She carried a tray with a single espresso cup. "Your coffee, Mrs. Haynes," the attendant said, her voice quiet but firm. Mr. Haynes insists on his wife starting the day promptly. "No, wait," Elena stammered, holding up the ruby hand. "That's not my name. I'm Elena Robinson. I need my phone. I need to know what happened and why I'm wearing this." The attendant's expression finally shifted, offering a glimpse of pity. "Your personal effects were secured, Mrs. Haynes. Your friends and the foundation board were informed you accepted a swift, private marriage proposal. Everything is under control." The floor felt like quicksand. The door to the sitting room opened, and a man stepped in. Jeremy Haynes. He was even more imposing in person than in the rare, grainy news photos she'd seen. A force of nature contained within a custom-tailored black shirt that emphasized the dangerous artistry of the tattoos visible on his neck and hands. He moved with a predator's quiet efficiency, his dark eyes assessing her distress with chilling calm. "Good, you're finally awake, Elena." He walked to an antique writing desk and placed a document on the dark mahogany surface. It was not a video, but a heavy embossed marriage certificate, flanked by a stack of legal papers. The ceremony wasn't a nightmare or a mistake. It was real. "You are legally, irrevocably, my wife." He waited for the terror to sink in, then delivered the final blow. "And you will remain my wife for the next 6 months. You have until noon to accept the terms, $500,000 deposited immediately, and the promise of your freedom. Refuse, and you won't just lose the money, you'll face the full wrath of the Haynes organization, which, trust me, is the more complicated debt." The Haynes estate rose from the hillside like a monument to old money and older secrets. Elena pressed her forehead against the tinted window of the town car, watching the iron gates swing open with mechanical precision. The manor itself was a sprawling Georgian revival, all white columns and severe symmetry, surrounded by manicured grounds that probably cost more to maintain than her annual salary. "Impressive, isn't it?" Jeremy's voice cut through her thoughts. "Intimidating is more accurate," she replied, not looking at him. The car glided to a stop beneath the portico. Before she could reach for the door handle, a suited man opened it from outside. He was built like a wall, broad shoulders, expressionless face, the kind of person who'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. "Marco," Jeremy said, stepping out with fluid ease. "My head of security. He'll be coordinating your safety." Elena met Marco's gaze. "Safety from what, exactly?" "From curiosity," a new voice answered. An elegant woman in her 50s descended the front steps, pearls at her throat, silver threading through her dark hair. "People will want to know everything about the woman who captured Jeremy Haynes. I'm Vivian, dear, his aunt, and unfortunately, the one tasked with making this circus look believable." "We'll need separate rooms," Elena said immediately. Jeremy's mouth curved. "Already arranged. Third floor, east wing. I'm in the west. A whole corridor between us. Will that satisfy your sense of propriety? It's not about propriety. It's about survival. Vivian's eyes sparkled with something like approval. I think I'm going to like you. They led her inside, through rooms that belonged in museums, not the humble community museum where she'd worked, but the kind with velvet ropes and hushed reverence. Jeremy's office was all dark wood and leather, dominated by a desk that had probably witnessed generations of Haynes family decisions. He poured himself a drink without offering her one. Sit. I'd rather stand. Suit yourself. He leaned against the desk, studying her with that unsettling intensity. We need to discuss the real terms of our arrangement. Elena's stomach tightened. There are more terms? Your father was obsessed with an artifact, the scepter of the raven. He let the words hang between them. It's tied to my family's history, a very old, very dark history. The board's requirements for leadership transfer aren't just about marriage, they want the scepter returned. The room tilted. You married me for my museum connections? I married you because you're the only person who might actually find it. Your father spent 20 years researching it before he died. His notes, his contacts, his academic reputation, it all went to you. Jeremy's expression hardened. Consider this your wedding gift to me. Find the scepter and I'll honor our agreement. Fail, and this marriage becomes very permanent. You bastard! We've established that. He set down his glass. But right now, we have a more immediate problem. Our announcement generated significant attention. We need to control the narrative before someone else writes it for us. Vivian appeared in the doorway. The photographer's here. Elena darling, we need to sell the fairy tale. The photo shoot was torture. The photographer positioned them in the library. Elena in an ivory dress Vivian had somehow procured. Jeremy in shirt sleeves that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. They were told to look intimate, but tasteful. Closer, the photographer urged. Mr. Haynes, if you could just… Yes, hand on her waist. Perfect. Mrs. Haynes, tilt your head toward him slightly. Jeremy's palm was warm through the thin fabric of her dress. His cologne was subtle, expensive, disorienting. This close, she could see the exact shade of his eyes, gray like winter storms. Smile like you mean it, he murmured against her temple, for her ears only. Or should I give you something to smile about? Her breath caught. The camera shutter clicked. That night, alone in her borrowed room, Elena unpacked her father's archived research. The yellowed pages smelled of libraries and lost time, and there, in his cramped handwriting, were the first breadcrumbs. The raven never forgets. Follow the keeper's path. She stared at the words until they blurred, understanding with cold certainty that her father had died, chasing the same ghost that now held her captive. Elena's fingers traced her father's words long into the night. The raven never forgets. But she had forgotten. An entire night erased from her memory, like chalk from a blackboard. The thought gnawed at her as dawn broke over the estate's grounds. The inner circle meeting was scheduled for 10. Vivian had laid out another perfectly tailored outfit, a navy sheath dress that screamed old money respectability. Elena hated how well it fit. The conference room was all glass and steel, a stark contrast to the manor's traditional elegance. 6 people sat around the table, their eyes tracking her entrance like predators assessing prey. Jeremy stood at the head, every inch the commander. Gentlemen, my wife. Elena, meet the board. The introductions blurred together until one man stood, extending his hand with calculated charm. Dominic Moretti was handsome in a dangerous way. Sharp cheekbones, darker eyes than Jeremy's, a smile that never reached them. Mrs. Haynes, such a sudden development. His grip lingered. One wonders what inspired such urgency. Elena withdrew her hand smoothly. When you know, you know. Isn't that what they say? They say many things. His gaze was surgical. Your father was Dr. Richard Castellano, wasn't he? The archaeologist? Her pulse jumped, but she kept her voice steady. "You've done your homework." "I always do." Fascinating man. Obsessed with mythology, particularly ravens and ancient power symbols. "Did he pass that obsession to you?" "He passed me his love of history. Everything else is his alone." Jeremy's hand settled on her shoulder. Possessive, warning. "Dominic, if you're quite finished interrogating my wife, we have business to discuss." The meeting was excruciating. Financial projections, territorial disputes, veiled threats disguised as business strategy. Elena sat silent, feeling like a prop in someone else's play. But the real test came that evening. Jeremy's grandmother resided in the manor's south wing, a suite of rooms frozen in another era. Catherine Haynes was 83 years old, and terrifying. Aristocratic bones, laser-sharp eyes, and the posture of someone who'd never bent to anyone. Dinner was served on china so delicate, Elena feared breathing on it. "So?" Catherine's voice could cut glass. "You're the museum girl who's captured my grandson's attention." "I prefer curator, actually." "I prefer honesty." Catherine set down her fork with precision. "What do you know about the Haynes family history?" "Only what's public record." "Public record." Catherine smiled without warmth. "How carefully diplomatic." "Your father wasn't diplomatic. He was relentless. He contacted this family repeatedly, asking about artifacts, about lineage, about things that were none of his concern." Elena's blood went cold. "My father was a scholar." "Your father was a man obsessed, and obsession, my dear, is hereditary." Catherine leaned forward. "Why do you think Jeremy married you? Certainly not for your charm." The words hit like a slap, but Elena held her ground. "Why don't you ask him?" "I'm asking you." "What artifact are you searching for?" The silence stretched taut. Then Elena met the old woman's gaze directly. "With respect, Mrs. Haynes, if your grandson wanted you to know, he would have told you himself." Something flickered in Catherine's eyes. Approval or fury, Elena couldn't tell. "You have steel. Good. You'll need it." Later, Elena walked the empty corridors trying to clear her head. She passed Jeremy's study and heard voices, his and another man's. The dosage was precise, no long-term effects. "And the memory suppression?" Jeremy's voice. "Complete. She won't remember anything from that night unless something triggers a flashback. The drug is undetectable after 48 hours." Elena's hand found the wall, steadying herself against the sudden vertigo. Drug. Memory suppression. The room spun. She pushed through the door. Both men turned, Jeremy unsurprised, the doctor alarmed. "Elena, you drugged me." Her voice was remarkably steady. "That night. You didn't just get me drunk, you drugged me." Jeremy dismissed the doctor with a gesture. When they were alone, he didn't deny it. "I needed your compliance, your expertise, your father's notes. I needed all of it, and you would never have agreed willingly. So you erased my choice." The words tasted like ash. "I secured an asset. This is business, Elena. Sentimentality is a luxury neither of us can afford." She stared at the man she'd married, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not a villain from a story, but something worse. A man who'd calculated her worth and decided consent was negotiable. "I'm going to find your scepter," she said quietly. "I'm going to restore my father's name. And then I'm going to disappear, and you'll never find me again." Jeremy's expression didn't change. "We'll see." But as she left, Elena felt something harden inside her, something that felt dangerously like resolve. Elena spent the next 3 days alone, avoiding Jeremy with the precision of someone who'd mapped every hallway and back staircase. She worked in her room, spreading her father's notes across the floor like pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit together. On the 4th night, Jeremy appeared in her doorway without knocking. "You can't solve it alone." Not a question. She didn't look up. "Watch me. I have the family archives, documents dating back 3 centuries, information your father never accessed." He paused. "We work together, or we don't work at all." The worst part was that he was right. His private library was smaller than the main one, more intimate. floor-to-ceiling shelves, a fireplace that actually worked, leather chairs worn soft with use. Jeremy laid out yellowed manuscripts, letters written in faded ink, family trees that branched like twisted roots. "The scepter appears first in 1647, he said, pointing to an entry in Latin. "A gift from—" "A gift?" Elena leaned closer, translating. "This says it was taken during a raid on a monastery outside Prague." His eyes sharpened. "You read Latin?" "4 years of it. My father insisted." She traced the text with one finger. "This isn't a family heirloom, Jeremy. It's stolen goods. Everything valuable has blood on it somewhere." But he made notes, cross-referencing with her father's research. "Your father believed the scepter was a key, literal or metaphorical." "Both. Probably. He loved double meanings." She pulled out a sketch from the archives. "Look at the raven engraving on the handle. That's not decorative. It's a cipher." They worked until past midnight, papers scattered, coffee growing cold. Elena found herself drawn into the puzzle despite everything, the way she always was with historical mysteries. And Jeremy. He surprised her. His mind was quick, lateral, making connections she'd have missed. "You actually care about this," she said, not quite a question. "History is power. Understanding where things come from tells you how to control them." He glanced up. "Is that so different from your work?" "Yes, I preserve history. You weaponize it. And yet here we are, doing both." The debates started after that. Elena argued the scepter belonged in a museum. Jeremy countered that it had never been public property to begin with. They dissected ancient civilizations like surgeons, each trying to prove the other wrong, until the arguments became less about winning and more about the conversation itself. On the 5th night, Elena went searching for the bathroom and got lost in the manor's labyrinth. She found herself near the service wing, hearing raised voices. "Can't afford the medical bills, sir. My daughter needs surgery and the insurance won't—" "How much?" Jeremy's voice, but different, gentler. 40,000. I know it's impossible, I just thought—" "Consider it handled. Marco will arrange the transfer tonight." A pause. "And Thomas? Take the week off. Be with your daughter. Your position will be here when you return." The man's voice broke with gratitude. Elena pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding as Jeremy emerged. He saw her immediately. Eavesdropping? Getting lost. She studied him in the dim hallway. "That was unexpected. I take care of what's mine." He moved past her. "Don't romanticize it." But the moment stayed with her. That night, working side by side again, she caught herself watching him, the way his brow furrowed when concentrating, the rare smile when they cracked a difficult passage. "There," she pointed at a sequence in her father's notes. "He's referencing Psalm 147. He gives to the beast his food and to the young ravens which cry." It's not just about the scepter, it's about what the ravens guard. Jeremy leaned over her shoulder to see, close enough that she felt his breath against her hair. "Your father was brilliant. He was obsessed. There's a difference." "Is there?" His voice was quiet. "You're here, aren't you? Chasing the same ghost." She turned, finding his face inches from hers. In the firelight, his features were softer, less severe. For one suspended moment, neither moved. "I'm here because you forced me," she said, but the words lacked conviction. "Tell yourself that if it helps." Her phone buzzed, shattering the moment. A text from an unknown number. "How well do you really know your husband? DM." Jeremy saw it, his expression hardening. "Dominic's getting bolder." Elena should have felt afraid. Instead, with Jeremy's solid presence beside her, she felt something else entirely, and that terrified her more than any threat. "We need to move faster," she said, "before this escalates." "Agreed." He stood, offering his hand to help her up. She hesitated, then took it. His grip was warm, steady, safe. She pulled away quickly, but not quickly enough to miss the knowing look in his eyes. The museum looked smaller than Elena remembered, more fragile in the morning light. She'd built a life here once, quiet, predictable, safe. That woman felt like a stranger now. 30 minutes, Jeremy said, scanning the parking lot with professional paranoia. Marco flanked them with 2 additional security guards, all of them moving with the practiced efficiency of men who expected trouble. It's a museum, not a war zone. Everywhere is a war zone when Dominic Moretti decides it is. Jeremy's hand pressed against her lower back, guiding her forward. Stay close. Her former colleague, Patricia, barely recognized her. Elena? My God. We thought the wedding announcement was so sudden. I need to access my father's archives, the restricted section. Patricia's eyes darted to Jeremy, to the guards, back to Elena. Of course, right this way. The archive room smelled of old paper and preservation chemicals, achingly familiar. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she unlocked her father's storage cabinet. 20 years of obsession, catalogued and filed. What exactly are we looking for? Jeremy stood close, watchful. A portrait. My father mentioned it once. A Haynes family portrait that was sold to the museum in 1952. She rifled through photograph files. He said there was something wrong with it, something that didn't belong. They found it 15 minutes later, a formal painting dated 1723, showing a stern patriarch with his family. Jeremy's ancestor, probably. Elena studied it under magnification, searching for the anomaly her father had noticed. There, she pointed at the carved chair arm beneath the patriarch's hand. See that marking? It's not part of the original design, it was added later. Jeremy leaned in, his shoulder pressing against hers. It's a coordinate system, latitude and longitude but encoded. My father was brilliant, Elena whispered. The explosion of sound came without warning. Metal shrieking against metal, glass shattering. The building shook. Jeremy had her on the ground before Elena processed what was happening, his body covering hers as debris rained down. Car crash, front entrance, Marco's voice through an earpiece. Multiple hostiles moving in. Jeremy pulled Elena upright with iron grip. Back exit, now. They ran. Elena clutched the photograph as gunfire echoed through the museum halls, actual gunfire, destroying her sanctuary. Jeremy moved like violence personified, his weapon appearing from nowhere, his shots precise and emotionless. Marco took a hit to the shoulder, barely flinching. Another guard went down. Jeremy physically threw Elena into the armored SUV, his body a shield until the door slammed shut. Drive, he barked. The vehicle lurched forward as bullets sparked off reinforced metal. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Jeremy's hand found hers in the chaos, squeezing once, reassurance or command, she couldn't tell. They lost the pursuit somewhere on the highway. By the time they reached the manor, Elena's hands had stopped shaking, but her mind hadn't stopped replaying the violence. Inside, Jeremy ordered. Blood seeped through his shirt sleeve. He'd been grazed and never mentioned it. In his private bathroom, Elena's curator instincts took over. She cleaned the wound with steady hands while he sat silent, watching her face. You've been shot, she said, her voice strange to her own ears. Barely. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. His hand caught her wrist gently. Neither were you. That's what matters. Their eyes met. The adrenaline was fading, leaving something rawer behind. Elena saw the man beneath the monster, the one who'd thrown himself between her and bullets without hesitation. Why? She whispered. Why protect me like that? You're mine to protect. Simple. Absolute. She should have argued. Instead, she finished bandaging him in silence, too aware of the heat of his skin, the solid reality of him. Later, examining the photograph's cipher, they decoded the coordinates. Jeremy's expression darkened. That's the North Tower. It's been sealed since before I was born. Then that's where we need to go. Not tonight. He stood, decisive. Dominic knows we're close. The ambush proves it. You're moving into the West Wing, my wing. Jeremy. This isn't negotiable, Elena. Not anymore. His voice softened fractionally. I can't protect you from across a corridor. She wanted to fight him. She wanted to maintain the distance that kept her safe, kept her heart untouched. But the memory of his body shielding hers, his blood on her hands, made protest impossible. "Fine," she said quietly, "but separate rooms." Adjoining. He moved to the door. "Pack light. Marco will move your things." Alone, Elena stared at the decoded coordinates. The scepter was close now, she could feel it. But so was something else, something more dangerous than Dominic Moretti's threats or ancient artifacts. She was starting to forget why she needed to escape. The North Tower's entrance was hidden behind a false wall in the wine cellar, sealed with a lock that hadn't been opened in decades. Jeremy's hands were steady as he worked the mechanism, but Elena felt the weight of history pressing down like the earth above them. The stairs descended into darkness that swallowed their flashlight beams. The air grew colder with each step, thick with the smell of stone and secrets. Elena counted 47 steps before they reached the bottom. The vault door was iron, ornate, inscribed with ravens that seemed to watch them with knowing eyes. The cipher from the portrait served as the key, a sequence of pressure points that had to be touched in precise order. The lock disengaged with a sound like bones breaking. Inside, the vault was smaller than Elena expected. A single pedestal stood in the center, and upon it, "God," she breathed. The scepter of the raven was magnificent and terrible. Black metal that seemed to absorb light, the raven's head forming the handle with rubies for eyes. Power radiated from it like heat, like malice. Her father had died chasing this, had spent his life obsessed with it. Jeremy reached for it, but Elena's hand shot out. "Wait, look." The pedestal wasn't empty except for the scepter. A leather-bound book lay beside it, newer than everything else in the vault. Elena lifted it with trembling hands. A ledger. Accounts, dates. Transactions written in Jeremy's precise handwriting. May 15, 2024. Payment rendered, $500,000. Asset location, Vienna. Contact, Dr. Matthias Volker. Her blood turned to ice. Volker, she knew that name. "Elena!" Jeremy's voice held warning. She flipped pages, the truth assembling itself like shards of glass. June 2, 2024. Vienna acquisition complicated. Volker refused final terms. Situation escalated. June 3, 2024. Problem resolved. Asset secured. Cleanup crew dispatched. Matthias Volker. Her voice was hollow. "My father sent me to find him 3 years ago. He was helping Dad research the scepter's origins. He stopped responding to emails in June." She looked up at Jeremy, then back at the scepter. In the flashlight's beam, she saw it. Dark stains on the raven's head, dried and ancient-looking but not ancient enough. Blood. "You killed him." Not a question. Jeremy's expression didn't change. "He had what I needed and refused to sell. He threatened to go public about the Haynes family history. I couldn't allow that." "So you murdered him?" Elena's hands shook, the ledger slipping from her fingers. "You murdered my father's friend for this thing." "It's not a thing. It's the key to controlling the board, to securing the leadership, to what?" She was screaming now, the sound echoing in the vault. "To justify murder? He was a historian, Jeremy, a scholar. He wasn't a threat. He was a person. He was an obstacle." Jeremy's voice hardened, the warmth she'd glimpsed these past weeks vanishing like smoke. "This is my world, Elena. People who get in the way don't survive. I did what was necessary." "Necessary?" She laughed, the sound breaking. "I saw you help your employee. I watched you protect me. I thought—" She pressed her hands to her face. "I thought there was something human in you." "That's your mistake, not mine." He picked up the scepter, examining it with cold appreciation. "I never pretended to be anything other than what I am. A killer. A survivor." He turned to face her fully. "And now you have what you came for. The scepter is found. The board will approve the leadership transfer. Our contract proceeds as planned." Elena stared at him. This man she'd started to see as more than a monster. This man whose touch had begun to feel like safety instead of threat. The betrayal cut deeper than she wanted to admit. The contract said 3 months. Her voice was ice over volcanic fury. I have 1 week left. I'll play your wife in public. I'll smile for your cameras. I'll convince your board that this marriage is real. She stepped closer, holding his gaze. But the moment that clock runs out, I'm gone. And I'm taking evidence of what you did to Volker with me. That would be unwise. I don't care anymore. She moved toward the stairs, needing air, needing space. I'll save my museum. I'll honor our deal. But don't ever touch me again. Don't speak to me unless it's necessary. We're strangers who happen to be married. Elena. 1 week, Jeremy. Then I become the ghost you'll spend the rest of your life trying to forget. She climbed the stairs without looking back, leaving him alone with his blood-stained prize. Behind her, in the darkness, she heard something that might have been his voice calling her name. She didn't stop. The days crawled by like wounded things. Elena moved through the manor like a ghost, speaking only when cameras were present, smiling only when witnesses watched. At night, she locked the adjoining door between their rooms and pushed furniture against it. Jeremy didn't try to open it. She contacted her lawyer through encrypted channels, drew up divorce papers, transferred funds to accounts he couldn't trace. Her museum would be saved. The board had already received the anonymous donation that would keep it running for years. Her father's legacy, at least, would survive. She couldn't say the same for her own. On the 5th day, Jeremy cornered her in the library. She'd been cataloging her father's notes, preparing to return them to the museum archives. Elena. His voice was careful, controlled. We need to talk. We have nothing to discuss. I disagree. He moved closer but stopped when she flinched. Something crossed his face, pain maybe, or its distant cousin. What I did to Volker was murder. Yes, he didn't deny it. But my feelings for you are real. These weeks working together, the conversations, He stopped. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to be different. Elena looked at him fully for the first time in days. You can't be different, Jeremy. This is who you are. You eliminate obstacles. You take what you want. You justify violence as necessity. She closed her father's journal with careful precision. And I can't spend my life wondering when I'll become an obstacle too. You never would. You drugged me. You erased my consent. You killed a man my father trusted. Her voice cracked, but held. You've shown me exactly who you are. I was just fool enough to ignore it. Elena. 6 more days. That's all we have left. Don't make them harder than they need to be. She left him standing there, surrounded by all the history books that couldn't teach him how to be human. The preparations for their anniversary celebration began on day 6. A cruel irony, celebrating 3 months of captivity disguised as marriage. The event was mandatory, the final performance before their contracts end. Jeremy's board, the Moretti family representatives, every vulture in their world would attend. Elena selected a blood-red dress for the occasion. Let them see the truth in metaphor. That afternoon, Marco appeared at her door, his expression grim. Mrs. Haynes. Mr. Haynes needs to see you. Immediately. Jeremy's office was in controlled chaos. Security feeds covered every screen, Marco coordinating with teams Elena hadn't known existed. What's happened? Despite everything, alarms spiked through her. Intelligence from our contact in the Moretti organization. Jeremy's jaw was tight. Dominic isn't just after the scepter. He believes it can be activated, that it's not just a symbol of power, but a source of it, and he thinks you're the key. That's insane. It's an artifact, not a... Your father believed otherwise. So did Volker. He pulled up files on the screen. Her father's research. Passages she'd never seen. They thought the scepter was a conduit. That someone with the right bloodline could use it to access information, leverage, control over the old families. My bloodline? Elena's laugh was bitter. I'm a museum curator, not a... Your mother's family, the Castellanos. They were keepers, Elena. Guardians of artifacts for centuries. Jeremy's eyes held hers. Dominic knows this, and tomorrow night, when all the families are gathered, he's planning to take you. The room tilted. So what's your solution? Lock me up like property? Keep you safe, yes. He moved toward her. Elena, I know you hate me. I know I've destroyed any chance of... He stopped. But let me protect you. One more night. And then? Then you're free, as promised. That night, Elena sat in her locked room while the manor prepared for tomorrow's celebration. Security had tripled. She'd been assigned guards outside her door. Jeremy's protection felt like a prettier cage. At midnight, she made her decision. The scepter was evidence. Volker's murder could be proven. The Haynes family's crimes could be exposed. She'd spent her life preserving truth. It was time to weaponize it. Elena disabled the room's security camera with techniques learned from too many heist movies, picked the lock on her window with a hairpin and desperation. The drop to the garden was 15 feet. She'd climbed worse during archaeological digs. The vault's location was burned into her memory. She'd photographed the ledger, the scepter, everything. She'd send it to every authority that might listen. And then she'd disappear before Jeremy or Dominic could stop her. She didn't let herself think about the look in Jeremy's eyes when he'd asked her to trust him one more time. She didn't let herself acknowledge the part of her that had wanted to say yes. The North Tower waited in darkness, holding its terrible secrets. Elena descended into the vault alone, her phone's flashlight cutting through shadows. She didn't hear the footsteps behind her until it was too late. The footsteps belonged to Marco. Mrs. Haynes. His voice was resigned, not surprised. Mr. Haynes said you'd try something like this. Elena's hand closed around her phone. Let me pass, Marco. Can't do that, but his tone was gentle. Come on, let's get you back before... The explosion shook the manor to its foundations. They ran, up the stairs, through corridors suddenly filled with smoke and screaming. The ballroom, the party had already started, guests arriving early for the spectacle of the Haynes anniversary. Now it was a different kind of spectacle. The grand doors hung broken. Inside, chaos reigned. Overturned tables, shattered champagne flutes, guests fleeing in evening gowns and tuxedos, and gunfire, methodical and terrifying. Dominic Moretti stood near the entrance with 6 armed men, searching faces with predatory focus. There, he pointed directly at Elena. Marco shoved her behind a pillar as bullets tore through marble. Stay down! But Dominic's men were advancing, and Marco was 1 man against 6. Elena's mind raced through the manor's layout, her father's architectural studies, the historical blueprints she'd memorized. Then Jeremy was there, appearing through the smoke like violence incarnate. His weapon spoke 3 times, 3 men dropped. He reached Elena in 4 strides, hauling her up by her arm. You couldn't stay put for 1 goddamn night? I was trying to... Save it. He fired over her shoulder, and she heard a body hit the floor. Kitchen, now! They ran through servant passages Elena had never seen, Marco and 2 other guards forming a protective wedge. Behind them, Dominic's voice echoed, Seal the exits! She doesn't leave this building! The kitchen was industrial, all steel and tile. Jeremy shoved Elena behind a commercial oven as bullets sparked off metal surfaces. One of the guards went down. Then, Marco took a hit to the leg, collapsing with a grunt. We're trapped, Jeremy said, his voice too calm. Blood seeped through his shirt. He'd been hit and hadn't mentioned it. Again. Elena's mind flashed to her father's notes. The manor's original plans, drawn in 1723. No, we're not. She crawled to the pantry, running her hands along the floor. The original house had smugglers' passages, for rum running during Prohibition. There's an entrance, here! The tile lifted, revealing darkness and stone steps leading down. That could go anywhere, Jeremy said, but he was already moving. Marco, hold them as long as you can. Go, Marco gasped. Get her out. The passage was narrow, claustrophobic, thick with the smell of earth and decay. Elena led with her phone's light, Jeremy close behind. She heard his breathing, labored, pained. How bad is it? I've had worse. That's not an answer. The passage twisted, descended. Then Elena's light caught it, a section of floor that looked different from the rest, stones fitted in a geometric pattern. Stop, she grabbed Jeremy's arm. Don't step there. She knelt, examining the pattern. Her curator's eye recognized it, a puzzle lock, the kind Renaissance architects loved. Press the wrong stone. And, what are we looking at? Jeremy asked. A pressure trap. Probably drops us into a pit or triggers a collapse. Her fingers traced the pattern. But there's a safe path. See how these stones are slightly raised? It's a sequence. She mapped it quickly, then led them across one careful step at a time. Halfway through, Jeremy stumbled. Elena caught him, feeling the heat of fever through his shirt. Stay with me, she commanded. Planning on it. They reached the other side. The passage ended at a steel door, modern, out of place. Jeremy punched in a code with shaking fingers. The panic room was small, reinforced, stocked with supplies. Jeremy collapsed into a chair the moment the door sealed behind them. Let me see. Elena was already moving, peeling back his blood-soaked shirt. The wound was high on his shoulder, still bleeding. Not arterial, but bad enough. She found the medical kit, her hands steady despite the adrenaline crash. This is going to hurt. Everything hurts. But his eyes were on her face, not the wound. You saved my life back there. You saved mine first. She cleaned the wound, applied pressure. We're even. Are we? Her hands stilled. In the panic room's harsh light, she saw him clearly, not the monster or the manipulator, but the man beneath. Bleeding, vulnerable, looking at her like she was something precious he'd already lost. I don't know, she whispered. Jeremy's hand covered hers, warm and solid. Elena, when this is over, we're done. That was the deal. What if I don't want to be done? Her heart was a traitor, hammering against her ribs. She'd spent days hating him, fearing him, running from what he represented. But in this moment, with his blood on her hands and his life in her care, she couldn't lie to herself anymore. She was terrified because she was falling, had already fallen, loved this dangerous, damaged man who'd drugged her and married her and killed for power, but would also die to protect her. It doesn't matter what we want, she said, but her voice broke. Doesn't it? Above them, muted by steel and stone, the sounds of warfare continued. Tomorrow would bring consequences, reckonings, choices that couldn't be unmade. But tonight, in this hidden space, Elena allowed herself one moment of terrible honesty. You're going to break my heart, she said. Jeremy pulled her closer, careful of his injury. I know. She should have pulled away. She didn't. The sounds of warfare faded to silence over the next hour. Jeremy's blood had soaked through 2 bandages before Elena finally stopped the bleeding. In the panic room's fluorescent light, she could see how pale he'd become. Security's cleared the manor, he said, checking his phone with his good hand. Dominic's men retreated. Police are on scene. Police? Elena looked up sharply. I called them, told them it was a home invasion. His smile was bitter. Which, technically, it was. She should ask about the bodies, about what story he'd tell, about all the logistics of covering up a small war in a historic manor. Instead, she asked, Can you walk? Eventually. That's not reassuring. They sat in silence, the adrenaline finally draining away, leaving only exhaustion and something raw between them. Elena had packed her escape in her mind 100 times, what she'd take, where she'd go, how she'd disappear. The chaos upstairs was perfect cover. She could leave right now. Should leave. You're thinking about running, Jeremy said quietly. I'm always thinking about running. She finished tying off the bandage. It's what people do when they're trapped. Are you? Trapped? Elena looked at him, really looked. At the man who'd drugged her and married her against her will, who'd killed for an artifact and would probably kill again, but also the man who'd thrown himself between her and bullets, who'd trusted her to lead him through darkness, who'd bled protecting her when he could have just let Dominic take her and wash his hands of the whole mess. I don't know what I am anymore, she admitted. Jeremy reached for her hand with careful deliberation. Elena, I'm going to say something, and you're going to think it's manipulation. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm not capable of anything else. He took a breath that seemed to cost him. But I fell in love with you. Not the asset, not the curator with the connections. You. Your mind, your courage, the way you see through every lie I tell myself. Jeremy, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to let me become someone you could forgive. His grip tightened. I'll dismantle everything. The criminal networks, the dirty money, all of it. We'll rebuild legitimately, use the resources for something that doesn't require bodies in its foundation. But I need you to believe I can change. I need you to stay. Elena's eyes burned. You killed Volker. I did. You drugged me. Stole my consent. Yes. You built a cage and called it a marriage. I know. His voice cracked. I know what I am, but with you, I could be something different, something better. She pulled her hand away, standing, paced the small room while her mind waged war with her heart. Everything rational screamed for her to run. He was dangerous, damaged, built from violence and control. She should take her freedom and never look back, but she thought of the nights in the library, decoding her father's obsession. The way Jeremy's mind worked like hers, complementary and challenging. The employee he'd helped without witnesses. The way he'd looked at her in the vault like she was more valuable than any artifact. The way she felt when she was with him, alive in a way museums and quiet scholarly life had never made her. Terrified, yes. But also seen, challenged, met as an equal, even when he held all the power. I'm afraid, she said finally, not of you hurting me physically. I'm afraid of loving you and watching you revert. Afraid of becoming complicit in the next violence, the next crime. Afraid that this feeling between us isn't real. It's just survival instinct and Stockholm syndrome dressed up pretty. It might be. His honesty cut. I don't know the difference anymore, but I want to find out. With you. Elena turned to face him. The scepter goes to the authorities, or a museum trust, with full provenance investigation. I won't be party to keeping stolen goods. Agreed. Full transparency. No more secrets, no more separate worlds. I know everything about your business, your decisions. We're partners, or we're nothing. Yes. And if you ever try to control me like that again, if you drug me or manipulate my consent, I will destroy you. I'll take every secret I learn and burn your world down. Jeremy stood, unsteady but determined. I believe you. I'm counting on it. She searched his face for the lie, for the angle, found only exhaustion and hope and something that looked dangerously like love. This is insane, she whispered. Probably. I should run. Probably. But I'm not going to. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Not because I have to, but because... She stopped. Started again. Because I'm safer and more alive with you than I ever was without you. And I hate that it's true. But it is. Jeremy crossed to her in 2 strides. His good hand cupped her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything he was. Say it again, the part about choosing. I choose this, Elena said against his palm. I choose you. God help me, but I do. The kiss was nothing like their wedding. No witnesses, no performance, no haze of drugs stealing her awareness. This was conscious and deliberate, his mouth on hers tasting like blood and desperation and promise. She kissed him back with all the anger and fear and impossible hope churning in her chest. When they broke apart, Jeremy pulled the annulment papers from his jacket, crumpled, blood-stained. Together, they tore them into pieces. So, Elena said, breathless. What now? Now we build something new. His smile was almost shy. Together. 3 years later. Elena adjusted her daughter's sun hat. Watching Jeremy negotiate with the Italian ministry official about the monastery restoration project. Their foundation had funded 12 historical preservation sites in the past 2 years. Legitimate, legal, no blood on the ledger. Mama, is Papa almost done? Sophia asked in the mixture of English and Italian she'd adopted from too much time on site. Almost, Piccolina. Jeremy caught her eye across the courtyard, his smile warm and real. The monster she'd married had become the man she'd chosen, day by difficult day. The violence hadn't vanished. Their world still held danger. But they faced it together now, with open eyes and conscious consent. Her hand drifted to her swelling belly. Their second child, already making her presence known. Jeremy finished his conversation and joined them, pulling Elena close. Ready to go home? She looked at him, her husband, her partner, her choice. With you? Always. Some prisons, it turned out, you could transform from the inside. Some contracts became covenants. Some forced beginnings led to chosen forevers. And sometimes, the most dangerous loophole was love. Thank you for staying with me till the very end of this story. Every view, every comment, every moment you spend here keeps these stories alive. If you felt this one, make sure to subscribe and let me know you watched to the end.